We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, and now in New Mexico on 1000 KKIM. So, Clay, what do you think of Tobin?
We couldn't get much in, could we? He was on and on. That guy can talk.
He was funny. I'd love to have him back, though. He was.
He's always fun.
He's a great guest.
He's always fun.
He really
yeah,
is.
I like Tobin.
But now we are fortunate to have in studio one of the few really, really, really good people in Sacramento.
You mean a conservative?
A conservative who really walks the walk and talks the talk. And she's also a soothsayer. She's a former school superintendent, former assemblywoman, and current state senator, Jean Fuller. Jean, welcome to Take Care of Business.
Good to be with you again.
Happy New Year to you and Russell.
Thank you.
So you're a little bit of a soothsayer, talking about predictions for the year and what you think is going to happen.
Well, I'm an old teacher, so I'm always getting the homework ready for next week.
Oh, I like that.
And so as soon as the talks are done, I make my list of what are they going to come up with next.
You know, what we'll do is we'll have you on the end of the year, and we'll talk about all your predictions and which ones came
Oh, that would
through.
be great.
Yeah, that'd be fun to do. Yeah.
What difference does it make? You're not going to be able to get anything done up there with two-thirds majority the Democrats have.
Well, let me tell you what difference I'm planning on
Thank
making.
you.
And it starts out in local issues we'll definitely be able to continue to work on. So most of the things that my constituents come here with, I have great relationships across the aisle, and I'm good at finding coalitions among other kinds of industries to work through that. I think the next thing that I'm really looking forward to is regional issues, and I've continued. I was the lead on water a couple years ago in the Assembly because that's a regional issue. It's a South needs it, North has it, kind of an issue, and that is definitely coming up again. The bond that was on for 2014 will undoubtedly be brought up and probably changed because it's a different governor. And, of course, education issues. I've always spoken out about education issues, and I'm all over the map on those because it's frankly what I thought as a teacher, a principal, and superintendent. And now with the new perspective of what do school boards need. So those are the issues that are most relevant to me. And at the end of our time, when we have a little more time to talk about it, I'm going to talk about my CAMP plan, which is a California Assets Management Plan, because the bottom line is it's true that it will be very hard for like a Republican coalition to do things that are specifically conservative and that we want to do to balance the budget. So how about improving our GDP? How about improving our gross domestic product? If our state was better run and we were able to make more money from other sources, other countries and other states, which is gross domestic product, GDP, if we were able to improve that in 7 or 8 areas like energy, I think that thing could fill the hole. So you don't have to do everything by cutting. You can do something by becoming more profitable.
Right. We'll talk about CAMP near the end because I think that's important. Fiscal cliff, how's that going to affect the states?
Well, I think, most people have already read about where we are with the fiscal cliff, and now I'm going to move on to what's going to happen in March, because basically what happened was they postponed all the cuts to things like Medicare and Social Security for 2 months. So we're going to be renegotiating those in March. And what are we going to see happening when they come to renegotiate that? Well, one of the things we're going to see is that they're going to want to raise the debt ceiling and limit, and by negotiating those automatic cuts, they're going to try to get us to move that debt ceiling up.
Haven't we already hit the debt ceiling?
Yes,
As
and
of
now we're
yesterday
going to
we did.
need it again. We're going to need it raised again because they have an overspending problem. Until they fix the overspending problem, which if you look at the budget, you can see that there is a gap. I think it's like 1.6 trillion, somewhere in there. That is how much less money they got than they need. And that was just in 1 year. So that's going to be a problem. And the last thing is, of course, then they'll bring up those extensions like Farm Bill, wind energy, and high-speed rail.
Right. Our in-studio guest, State Senator Jean Fuller.
So, Jean, can you tell us what some of the specific cuts to Medicare or Social Security might be?
No, I cannot tell you what those cuts will be. I just know that the negotiations are being set up so that they have many things on their plate that they can negotiate for that we don't want to give up, that puts us in a difficult position in order to be able to balance the budget. And those things should have been taken care of in January. And I can see why a lot of people were reluctant to vote for this budget because those issues were were not signed, sealed, and delivered, they're going to be rehashed.
Those things should have been taken care of prior to the election back in October and
Oh,
November.
well, that's
Yeah,
the
right.
first, absolutely. That would have been true.
Let's
I've
talk
already
facts.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
These
And there's
people
no
have
Santa
these
Claus.
people have one goal, and that's to get reelected and keep getting more and more money in their pocket.
They keep delaying all the cuts and using those over and over and over again, same cuts to renegotiate a better deal for a liberal government.
Okay, I'm going to be a soothsayer here, okay? I'll make you a prediction. We're going to have happen the same thing that happened to George Bush the first, same thing that happened to Ronald Reagan, where they okayed the tax increases and never got the cuts that they were supposed to get. We're not going to get them.
They're going to get the cuts off the backs of the elderly.
Well, but they won't get that much in cuts because look at this thing they just negotiated. We're looking at $1, what is it, $42 in tax increases for every dollar in cuts.
Mm-hmm.
That's absurd, especially when we're losing as much money as we are every year.
Mm-hmm.
So my prediction is we're not going to see the cuts we need.
Oh, absolutely, because really with government, what I've learned over time is you need about 3 times the cuts on paper in order to get about a third or half of the actual cuts, because it never quite comes to fruition. It never gets completely implemented. There's some problem along the way. So if you start with 1/3 the cuts you need, you're just not even going to get there.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about the wonderful, beautiful, fantastic, overtaxed, overregulated state of California. I think that's where your expertise really is.
Yes, and so what are we thinking about there? Well, Governor Brown is already starting to surface that he would like to change school funding. He's already tried it once. It was defeated, and he's trying to move away from programs such as a class size reduction, which I think we really need, to increase the dollars going to English language learners and low income.
That's one thing
Students.
he's trying to do.
Yes.
Then we've got the legislators also talking about Proposition 13.
Yes, Proposition 13 is a rumor, but at this point I'm sort of tracking, so what is the governor saying about what he's going to do next? And on that same vein, one of the things he's saying is that he will renegotiate the water bond that's supposed to be on 2014, and something has to be done about it. Either we're going to have to pass it, or we're going to have to renegotiate it, or we're going to have to do whatever it is to make it viable. But he's talking about doing that. And then, of course, before the election, he was continuing to talk about high-speed rail, and we've got like 37 miles of tracks laying there with nothing else. So I'm assuming that something has to be done with the tracks, either electrify them, not do it, whatever, but he's going to have a plan on that.
Sure.
So 37 miles of high-speed rail track. How fast can they go in 37 miles?
Well, they can go from Merced to Fresno, but not with high speed, because you have to electrify it.
Are those tracks already there?
No, actually, they're going to start building them in 2013.
They just own the tracks. It's like having a toy train that you never
I'm not
set
even
up.
sure they.
Ooh, I like that
I'm not even sure
analogy.
they own them yet. I think they have to buy a lot of the parcels still. I'm not even sure that they're that close. So,
And with all the pending lawsuits, I don't know if they'll ever get this done.
but the point is, if you're Governor Brown and you've come out and support it, and you've taken money and given it to San Jose and Los Angeles for rolling stock, which means trains that'll be worn out before that high speed trail ever gets completely done, then you have to come up with some continuation.
And then there goes the cost again.
Yeah, well, yes, there
Yeah,
goes the cost. So,
unfortunately.
so we're looking at what topics are we waiting to hear more about? What trends?
So what are the real 2 top things you're going to be working on this coming year?
I'm going to be looking at CAMP, which is setting benchmarks for the GDP to make sure our state has a better opportunity to rank higher in attracting businesses, jobs, and the economy, and reducing regulation. And I'm going to set benchmarks so we can say, if we just did this, gave this many more permits, or shorten the timeline on CEQA for this much, then we could bring in this much more money to our state.
All right, Gene, that's a great idea, and I'm sorry to say, why would anybody want to come to California to set up a business? We're losing more businesses every day.
We are losing more businesses because of our regulation and our negative attitude toward businesses. And so what we have to do, I think, as legislators, is we have to point out specific examples that would make a big difference if we changed just one thing, because the public hasn't figured out what the connection is. Too confusing.
But 2/3 of the legislature don't agree with you.
2/3 of the legislature don't agree with us, but how else are we going to bring sanity to this place but continue to bring out what would make a big difference? And most businesses and people want jobs. If you can prove you're going to bring in 3,000 more jobs, I think people will rally behind that in local areas.
Sanity will come when we have an earthquake and L.A. drops into the ocean.
Ooh, and San Francisco.
Well, yeah, in San Francisco.
Yeah,
of course,
let's continue when we come back.
Wow.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180.